Hi everyone, this is Dragon GGY. This is the operator Hindsight for Titi, a medic operator which is very rare in this game. So without further ado, let's get started. Titi is a 6-star incantation medic in the medic class. Trait of the archetype: attacks deal arts damage and heal the HP of an allied operator within range for 50% of the damage dealt. They have a 3 times full attack range, so compared to traditional arts damage dealers like core casters, that's a more comfortable range to work with. Titi is a Sargon operator who also has a hidden faction of Minos. Titi is a sustain support, which generally means keeping allies alive. She provides crowd control in the form of sleep, which is an old CC that haven't seen fresh water in a long time. Still, similar to Nasty last month, the design of a kit still leans heavily towards being a countermeasure instead of a very versatile character. Titi's signature is being able to target slept enemies, dealing more damage to them, and she's able to protect friendly operators by putting them to sleep. And that approach is unlike anything we've ever seen before. And that's what we're gonna dive deep into later in the series. Talent 1 can attack slept enemies. When attacking non-mobile enemies, attacks will deal an additional 15% of attack as arts damage, 16% at potential 3. When Titi is on field, slept enemies will take arts damage equal to 30% of attack every second, 32% at potential 3. Talent 2, when on field, Sargon and Minos operators gain Vigor effect of plus 20 attack speed when HP is above 50%, 22 at potential 5. Now before everything, let's review sleep as a status effect, starting with the effect on enemies. When inflicted on enemies, it's actually a combined effect of invincible, which makes them immune to damage and becomes untargetable, disabled, which means that they cannot move, attack, or use skills, and becomes unblockable. And for most friendly units, they don't target slept enemies unless specified otherwise, because again, enemies are technically invincible during sleep. So when descriptions said can attack slept enemies, it means that the unit can target slept enemies and they will ignore their invincibility from the sleep status. Sleep as a status effect cannot be resisted by enemies' resistance. That's good news, but it would also mean that it cannot be prolonged by the CC relics in IS either, because they virtually use the same coding. So some other resistible statuses like Fear, despite not being on the description of the relics, they can be prolonged by them. So that's vice versa for Sleep. On top of that, Sleep is usually not relayable because again, slept enemies are untargetable, and that also includes applying another sleep. And that's also one of the big reasons for this CC not being as promising as the ones like Stun, Bind, and Freeze. To change sleep, you'll have to time the exact moment where enemies wake from the last sleep, and that's extremely difficult and unrealistic to pull off. Now we move on to friendly sleep, and this status on friendly unit is introduced with Titi in her skill 2 and skill 3. It's again a composite effect of invincible, disarm, which means that they can't attack nor use skills, and cannot block. This is really the only way right now in the game that operators can become immune to damage. They don't get targeted as if they do not exist, and usually only gets defeated by effects that seal the tile and forcing retreat. Operators slept will gain natural SP just as usual, and if they are in skill, then the skill progress will also tick down like normal. Unlike enemy sleep, this effect can be resisted, but is pointless because these effects usually last forever and only ends on specific conditions. However, the effect can be cleansed, which ignores the set conditions. Does cleansing bring good tactical value? Usually not though. If you want an operator to still fight during immortality, you should look to other options like Hoshigama Alter skill 3. Talent 1 says a lot about Titi's identity. More damage on non-moving targets, ones with no movement speed at a particular moment. That'll include targets that are standing still, stopping for range attacks, blocked, and of course, slept. So it extends the scope of her effective targets from just sleeping ones to more, and it's done by dealing an additional instance of damage. For the second part of the talent, the game basically checks the sleep condition of all enemies on field every second and gives them the DOT if they're in sleep. For those wondering, no, this DOT doesn't trigger the first half of the talent again. All these damages in talent 1 of course ignores the sleep invincibility. Fun fact, TT can target slept enemies even without this talent at E0. I mean, that's how the coding works. Talent 2 gives her a Sargon Minos 2 faction buff, and she does have a dual citizenship. To recap, a Vigor effect only takes the highest number if they boost the same stat. But if they are for different stats, for example, the Vigor effect from Palace is for attack, that and the attack speed Vigor from Titi can be effective at the same time. This effect is visualized by the golden flows around an operator. The attack speed gives Titi about 7% to 12% damage and healing increase, but her skill 2 doesn't benefit from attack speed at all, and if you look across both Sargon and Minos at this time, I wouldn't say it makes anyone in this list substantially better in the meta. They are probably good on some of them, like Pepe skill 3, Canadian skill 3, etc. But it's not a game-changing factor. The most relevant character in this list is probably Narantuya, but she doesn't need attack speed. So again, mostly for Titi herself, but for the operator it covers and the buff provided, not too bad either. Titi comes with her module. Trait update, the damage to healing transfer rate is now 60%. Talent upgrade goes to Talent 1, the additional damage on non-moving enemies is increased by 15%, and the sleep DOT scale is increased by 10%. Nothing particularly complicated about this module, it's just more stats. Notably, the non-moving target scale is doubled by the module, and the whole upgrade greatly increases the effectiveness on slap targets. Overall, this is a damage plus healing upgrade. The damage improvement from the upgrades contributes massively to the converted healing. The base DPS increase is 27.77% and boosts skill 2 and skill 3 damage by 42.4% and 20% respectively. On the healing side, base HPS increase is 53.3%, skill 2 HPS by 70.88%, and skill 3 healing by 44.1%. If you look to use her for both sustain and damage, like how you would use Reed Alter, then I think the improvement by level 3 is too good to pass. But if you're gonna use her mainly for the crowd control or the immortality support, then the module is optional since you don't need the extra damage and healing as much. For skill recommendations, skill 2 over skill 3 over skill 1. Skill 1 is the most ridiculous skill I've ever seen in a very long time, and I would recommend against its masteries. Skill 2 provides big coverage AoE sleep crowd control with good DPS on those slap targets. It protects Titi herself and another operator with very controllable timing, fast and flexible cycle using the new friendly sleep mechanic. Skill 3 is a multi-target, spreadable sleep application that comes with OK damage. It provides multi-target immortality with friendly sleep as well, but it's still highly limited by how sleep works and has very little synergy to work with other operators. And for skill 1, it can do one target sleep stall, but it's got absolutely terrible numbers that just makes it unusable. So let's get straight to skill 1, attack plus or 100%. Attacks have 50% chance to inflict sleep on an enemy for 3 seconds. This is a 18/40, 17-second skill. The numbers on the right are the best stats possible, and that's when the target is always asleep, which isn't quite the case in practice. During this skill, the expected sleep coverage on one target is about 76.3%, so 2/3 of the time, and that number can go up to 90% plus if you have 50 attack speed, but that's just one target, and for that, the skill packs a ridiculous startup at 22 seconds. Being a 17-second skill with a 40-second downtime is a catastrophe. The generic attack up gamma has 15/30, 30-second duration. The single target nature becomes very laughable when skill 2 and skill 3 are both multi-target, not to mention that they deal higher damage, have better cycles, and provide better sustain. This skill is an absolute accident. Avoid at all cost. Skill 2 stops attacking, attack plus 180%. When activated, TT and the operator with the lowest HP in range will sleep until the skill ends. During the sleep, enemies around TT and the affected operator will be inflicted with sleep as well. Talent 1 effect is increased to 3.3 times, can be manually deactivated. This is a 15/20, 15-second skill. Titi doesn't attack, so really it's about the empowered Sleep DOT doing all the damage. Skill DPS 2627, total damage at 39.4k, with the HPS of 1576 against 0 resistance enemies, and remember that number will go up for each enemy affected. Against enemies, the skill does AoE Sleep and deals damage via talent 1 only. It affects all the enemies in the surrounding 8 tiles of self and the target, and that's up to 18 tiles of coverage, and reaching as far as 5 tiles horizontally and 3 tiles vertically. Unlike Antilesia's skill 2, damage doesn't double when the 2 auras are stacked, because again the damage comes through with talent 1 and you don't double sleep someone. The operators falling asleep and having a sleep aura around them for enemies are two different things. The friendly sleep can be cleansed, but the aura will persist. And because of that, there's really no reason to cleanse the state. You don't really have a lot of cleanse options to start with. Lumen needs to heal before cleansing, and Lessing and Pepe are short-handed operators who will just stare into the sleeping enemies doing nothing. Now for the unique part, putting friendlies to sleep makes them untargetable by enemies, but not by allies, which means that they can still be healed, buffed like usual. So now before using X skill 3, you can now put an operator to sleep, let him cook, and they will take no damage but the buff, and you can stop the skill and have them go to work. Operators don't take damage at all during sleep, so obviously aside from not being targeted, it also includes splash damage, environmental damage, etc. They simply fall into a void, so you don't have to be worried about healing someone back up after saving them from death. And sometimes being able to avoid being targeted is just superior to other immortality. For example, the forced retreat from the Emperor's Blade against allies in the Dominion can't do anything when I'm technically not in there. Advantages of this skill: fast cycle, fast startup. It's very easy to time the invulnerability and you can just turn it off right afterwards if you're defending against some spike damage. The AoE nature coverage is also very good. For disadvantages, clearly it's completely shut down by sleep immune enemies. We're talking about no damage, no crowd control, no healing. They just walk straight through as if nothing is happening. The damage quality is honestly just average or mid, because unlike Reed Alter, who has the Arch-Fragile to boost her damage, Titi will struggle much more against high resistance and damage reduction enemies. If this skill can't dispose of them, they'll pile up and may even pose more problems. And other operators not being able to target slap enemies certainly add to that as well. So let's see how you should use this skill. Number 1 is clearly for the protection. Again, the timing is very controllable, the cycle is fast to fit more frequent enemy attacks. This is one of her standout applications. You can use it to survive key enemy skills in daily and more in IS, which we'll cover near the end of the video. Number 2, filling in gaps between skills. Again, operators recover SP normally when asleep, so the crowd control can stall enemies and buy them time to get the skill back. So it works with short cooldown skills better, and usually ground-based. For example, Pepe skill 2, Mitsuki skill 2, especially in IS with his specialized module, and Antilesia skill 2. These skills are also AoE, so they are less concerned about enemies piling up. The skill can also be used to protect operators when they deploy on dangerous ground and help them survive the startup time before the skill. Number 3 is relaying with other crowd controls. The most notable multi-target combo is Tragodia skill 2, making multiple enemies walk back. If you really want to play the sleep chain, you can do Blame Me Shine plus Black Knight for the trio and they can achieve perma-sleep. Or just generally, if you want to intentionally group up enemies for mass disposal, this skill is a decent choice. And finally, you can hella drop an operator in her range to turn them into a crowd control and damage emitter. Or if you plan ahead, you can specifically use it on operators who can function without themselves attacking, like summoners, megacore casters who do full map attacks, bards, and trap masters. And spoiler alert, we do have a cutting edge trap master coming next month. Just remember to use their skills first. Skill 3 attack plus 180% attacks 2 enemies. When attacking non-sleeping enemies, inflict sleep for 5 seconds. During skill, all enemies awakening from their sleep status or defeated when slept will take arch damage that increases up to 460% of attack depending on sleep duration, and propagate sleep to an enemy near them for 5 seconds. If a friendly operator takes fatal damage within range, they will enter sleep until their HP is fully restored or when Titi's skill ends. This is a 28/37 25-second skill, so despite having the same attack multiplier as skill 2, skill 3 does do direct damage, and there are a lot of damage components in the skill, with the awake damage spiking every few seconds. So in turn, the whole healing curve isn't that flat, so you won't see an average HPS here. But seeing up to a 105k damage in 25 seconds, you can expect a lot of healing that comes with it as well. So mechanics first. The awake damage scale builds up linearly every second and caps at 5 seconds, so Titi sleeps an enemy, they naturally gets the highest damage. Sleep Propagate has a 1.5 tile radius, and you can see it snapping to another target when active. The target selection follows taunt level, and interestingly, do prioritize enemies not in sleep, and will avoid sleep immune targets, certainly a well-considered point. Note that the propagate happens when enemies awake from sleep or is defeated in sleep. So in other words, it will happen twice and go to 2 different targets if an enemy is defeated by the awake damage, which is more than common if you ask me, so that's a decent surprise. Operators will enter the friendly sleep status when taking fatal damage, but that doesn't include Titi herself, so definitely keep an eye out against AoE damage. If Titi dies, everyone dies. The effect also has the lowest trigger priority out of all similar effects. Here's a list. Hoshigama Alter Skill 3 always comes first and can keep effects like Shrestha's Remnant Ash from triggering. We then have most of the effects that grants Undying, so including Dollkeeper's switching forms, Shrestha, etc. Then we have Silence Alter Skill 3, then Togawa's Team Immortality before finally getting to this skill. This is understandable because the skill puts operators to sleep, basically disabling them, so you want to save this as the last resort if other options are available. The effect can be triggered repeatedly as long as the skill is still active. For this skill, I want to lay out the pros and cons. The skill has a long reach. Sleep Propagating generates more healing aside from dealing damage, and that principle is identical to how Read Alter Skill 3 works. Second is the group Immortality. While it can protect any number of operators as long as they're in range, it doesn't force them or Titi herself to retreat after the skill. As long as the skill is still up, it will stay active. For cons, the crowd control from skill 3 is an uncontrolled chaos. When there are a lot of enemies, it's hard to predict where the sleep will propagate to and when enemies are waking up. Remember that Titi's attack in this skill is applying sleep to enemies not sleeping, instead of doing that with every attack. So there will be gaps between enemy sleeps, and when there are a lot of targets, sometimes they wake up to squeeze into attacks, and that introduces uncertainty to the sustain needs. As mentioned, Titi herself doesn't get the immortality, so you need to be aware of enemies targeting or AoE damage. Operators can be saved by the skill, but they are also not functional until full HP, so that's up to the quality of enemies, how fast they can wake up. And even when they wake up, they usually just stare into the sleeping enemies doing nothing. That's mostly on the sleep mechanic, but then the skill feels awkward when you put it into a regular team. There's no synergy with the usual daily choices. Others may waste their skills, ammo, targeting enemies as they briefly wake up, only to deal 0 damage as they sleep again before the projectiles can land. Overall, it does the job of sustaining allies, disabling enemies, but doesn't work with teammates at all in most situations. Overall, if you compare it to Read Alter Skill 3, it's not killing mobs as fast because the damage spike happens when they wake up. So I'd say Read Alter is more for weaker mob waves, and Titi's skill is more reserved for elite enemies. Not boss because most bosses have sleep immunity, unfortunately. To wrap up, Titi is a sustained support that offers sleep as a rarer crowd control and friendly immortality approach. She has decent healing as long as her targets have reasonable resistance stats, does multi-target sleep application while being able to damage them at the same time. Most uniquely, she's able to protect friendly units by putting them to sleep with controllable timings using skill 2. However, she's also wearing a lot of shackles. As is the case for incantation medics as a whole, their healing is heavily crippled when enemies have high resistance or damage resistance stats. And for Titi specifically, not only is her crowd control completely shut down by sleep immune targets, her damage and healing will also follow, cutting by half or even more. In fact, it's cut to 0 in skill 2. And finally, as an inherent problem of sleep, it naturally comes with lack of coordination from other operators, a problem found only with sleep out of all the crowd control options, and that pretty much seals the deal with Titi's performance in daily. She's just an outlier of your usual gameplay habits. For new players, she as a sustain option is okay-ish when enemies do not have high damage resistance stats, but starting from chapter 4 you'll get a rise of Sarkas and caster enemies who have relatively high resistance, and without masteries and talent 1 buffs from E2 and module, skill 2 has much less damage and may cause piling up of enemies, which is not ideal for newer players. For AFK gameplay, not qualified, she's a complete anti-synergy in this race, so that's a skip. For veteran players, unfortunately her gimmick doesn't work with most systems and popular damage options, and putting her into your 12 ops team in some degree is already a self-posed challenge. For advanced gameplay, well, there are certainly potentials with her kit. In IS, skill 2 provides a low-effort, low-cost option to protect herself and another operator from spike damage. For example, IS 3 ending 4, she can protect another healer to get everyone through the Mizuki stun and damage over time. In IS 5 ending 2 after defeating Theresis, and ending 5 when Amiya absorbs the moving energies. This continues in IS 6, avoiding the ending 2 triple stomp is a textbook application. We have another spike damage with ending 4's phase transition, we have the damage ricochet dragon tails in ending 5, the same goes for the candle bearer challenges. These can all be countered by Titi's mechanics, and all these can be done when she's in E1, and if you're short on hope, it's completely fine to keep her that way. Sleep DOT is a good countermeasure to damage instance enemies, so that's a thing in IS 6. Sleep can shoot down levitate enemies, that will become more relevant in IS 3. And in IS 5, if you play the tier 2 Soul Escort Squad, using TT alongside Kafka with the reduced redeployment time is a viable option as well. In the upcoming second installment of Stronghold Protocol Alliance, TT will be featured as a preset operator that can stack both Precision and Sargon, basically taking up Passenger's place in the last iteration. But it's also a pretty explicit way to showcase the experience of playing her into your daily team. So behold, for the game mode's return 2 months later. For other hardcore gameplay, I think both of her sleep protection towards friendlies and the crowd control sleep, which potentially can filter out sleep immune enemies for unique strats, could find applications. But again, these challenges, especially contingency contract, require specific countermeasures. We've had a fair share of those operators who have yet to get their tailor-made environments, so we'll have to wait and see. Okay, that's gonna be it for this episode. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.